The Aurelian spire did not look like a place for peace. It looked like a weapon sheathed in glass, a needle of durasteel driving itself into the velvet darkness of the neutral zone. Outside the reinforced viewports, the swirling, bruised purples of the gas giant Typhaon provided a backdrop that felt less like scenery and more like a threat. Captain Jace Arden stood near the edge of the spire's grand atrium, his dress uniform feeling tighter than his combat armor ever had. The high collar dug into his neck, stiff with the gold braiding of the human sovereign armada. He adjusted his cuff for the 10th time in as many minutes. He hated politicians. He hated the recycled air of diplomatic stations. Most of all, he hated the waiting. This summit was the only thing standing between humanity and a total war with the Caridian star dynasties. One wrong word, one misplaced gesture, and the armadas waiting silently on either side of the border would turn the vacuum into a slaughterhouse. Jace took a sip of the sparkling water he had been nursing for an hour. It was lukewarm. Across the station, in a suite that smelled of ozone and crushed lavender, Princess Lyra Thay Caris studied her reflection in a pane of black crystal. She did not look human, though the resemblance was close enough to be unsettling to the uninitiated. Her skin was the color of moonlight on water, pale and luminous, and intricate patterns of bioluminescence traced the line of her spine and wrapped around her upper arms. They pulsed with a slow, rhythmic light, betraying a calmness she did not feel. A shadow detached itself from the corner of the room. It was Counselor Vryn, his face hidden behind the ceremonial cowl of the Caridian Intelligence Directorate. "You are ready? Hi, daughter," Vryn said. His voice sounded like dry leaves scraping over stone. Lyra turned. Her gown was a masterpiece of shifting fabric that seemed to ripple like liquid mercury, designed to distract and mesmerize. "I am ready," she answered. Her voice was steady, trained in the royal courts to show nothing but ice. Vryn stepped forward and held out a small object. It looked like a piece of jewelry, a delicate silver clasp meant to be worn at the throat. But Lyra knew the weight of it. It was biotech, grown rather than built, alive and hungry. The human captain, Jace Arden, carries the Alpha 1 command codes in his neural implant, Vryn said. He is the key. Unacceptable human encroachment on the outer rim cannot be tolerated any longer. We need those codes to disable their perimeter defenses. If we strike with certainty. Lyra took the device. It felt warm against her palm. And the method? Intimacy, Vryn said. The device requires skin-to-skin contact with the pulse point nearest the implant. It mimics a lover's touch while it strips the mind bare. He will not feel the theft. He will only feel you. Lyra fastened the clasp to the collar of her gown. It hummed against her collarbone, a faint vibration that synchronized immediately with her heartbeat. I understand my duty. Counselor, do not fail us. Lyra, the dynasties cannot survive another stalemate. Lyra swept out of the room, her head held high. She was a weapon wrapped in silk, walking into a room full of targets. The grand atrium was a sensory overload. Delegates from a dozen minor systems mingled with the two superpowers, a sea of bright fabrics, metallic skins, and hushed conversations in 20 languages. Floating trays of anti-gravity hors d'oeuvres drifted between guests. Jace was considering a tactical retreat to the nearest exit when the crowd parted. She walked in like a planetary event. Jace had seen Caridians before, mostly through the targeting reticle of a railgun or across the negotiating table where they looked like statues carved from marble. He had never seen one like her. She moved with a fluid underwater grace that made the humans around her look jerky and unrefined. Her bioluminescent markings cast a soft azure glow on the floor beneath her feet. He watched her navigate the room. She was sharp. He saw the way her eyes cataloged the exits, the security detail, the mood of the crowd. She wasn't just a royal ornament. She was analyzing the battlefield, as if feeling the weight of his gaze. She turned. Her eyes were solid violet, lacking whites or pupils, endless and deep. They locked onto him across the 50 feet of polished floor. Jace didn't look away. He couldn't. She began to move toward him. The crowd seemed to dissolve around her. As she approached, Jace straightened, his training kicking in. "Captain Arden," she said. Her common was flawless, though it carried a melodic cadence that sounded like music. "I am Lyra Thay Karis." Jace bowed his head slightly, keeping his eyes on hers. "Your Highness, I didn't expect royalty to be mingling with the grunts." Lyra smiled, and it transformed her face from a mask of cold beauty into something dangerous and inviting. "Even grunts have their uses, Captain. And I have heard you are the man who held the blockade at Cygnus 9. Jace stiffened. "That was not a diplomatic victory, that was a graveyard. I just followed orders, Highness. Orders that saved 3 million civilians," she countered softly. She signaled a passing drone, taking 2 fluted glasses filled with a liquid that shifted from blue to gold to deep crimson. She handed one to him. "What is this?" Jace asked, eyeing the swirling colors. "A Caridian vintage," she said. "We call it mirror glass. It changes flavor based on the thermal signature of the holder. It tells the truth about your mood." Jace took the glass. The liquid turned a turbulent, stormy gray. "Interesting," Lyra murmured, glancing at his glass. "It seems you are storm-tossed, Captain." Jace took a sip. It tasted like wood smoke and rain, better than the lukewarm water. "I'm a soldier at a peace summit, Highness. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." Lyra took a sip of her own. Her glass turned a warm, steady amber. "Or perhaps you are just lonely." Jace choked on a laugh. It was a sharp, bitter sound. "That is a very direct assessment." "I do not have time for human circuitousness," Lyra said. She stepped closer, invading his personal space just enough to be noticeable, but not enough to be aggressive. "Tell me, Captain, do you believe this summit will succeed? Or are you polishing your gun in your mind right now?" Jace looked at her. He saw intelligence there, and something else. Curiosity? Or was he just projecting? "I don't want a war," he said honestly. "I've seen enough vacuum exposure to last 10 lifetimes. I want this to work. But trust is a scarce resource." Lyra tilted her head. Her bioluminescent tattoos flared slightly brighter. A biological reaction he couldn't interpret. Empathy, surprise. "You surprise me." "Jace Arden," she said. "I was told the Admiral's protege would be a creature of iron and regulation." "I am," Jace said. "But iron breaks if you hit it hard enough. I'd rather bend a little." He felt a sudden need to be polite, to bridge the cultural gap. He remembered a briefing on Caridian etiquette, a specific gesture meant to show deep respect and submission to authority. He stepped back, placed his hands flat against his thighs, and bowed low, bending at the waist until his torso was parallel to the floor, holding the pose for 3 seconds. When he straightened up, he expected an appreciative nod. Instead, Lyra was staring at him, her violet eyes wide, her hand covering her mouth. A strange, chirping sound was escaping her throat. She was giggling. Around them, several other Caridian delegates had stopped dead, staring at Jace with expressions of profound shock. "What?" Jace asked, panic rising. Did I do it wrong? Lyra composed herself, though her shoulders were shaking. Captain, she whispered, leaning in so only he could hear. In my culture, that particular angle of the bow, combined with the hand placement, is not a greeting. Jace felt the blood drain from his face. What is it? It is a mating display, she said, her voice dancing with mirth. You just announced to the entire room that you are a fertile male seeking a dominant matriarch to sire a clutch of eggs with. Jace started to cough, violently. He choked on his mirror glass, the gray liquid splashing onto his hand. He wheezed, his face turning a brilliant shade of crimson that rivaled the gas giant outside. I did what? He rasped. Lyra was laughing openly now, a musical bell-like sound that seemed to shatter the tension in the immediate vicinity. It was a very impressive display. Captain. Though I am afraid my father would demand a dowry before we proceeded. Jace wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Mortified. I am so sorry. The briefing packet said. Burn the packet, Lyra said, her eyes gleaming. It was worth it for the look on Counselor Vrin's face. Look at him. Jace glanced over. The shadowy figure in the corner looked like he had swallowed a lemon. The awkwardness vanished, replaced by a strange, bubbling chemistry. The barrier of protocol had been smashed by the absurdity of the moment. Come, Lyra said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming serious again. Let me save you from further diplomatic incidents. There is an observation deck on the upper spire. It is quiet. I have a cultural gift I wish to discuss. Off the record. Jace hesitated. He knew he should stay in the public eye. But the humiliation of the bow was still burning his cheeks. And the way she looked at him, with amusement, but without malice, was a lure he couldn't resist. Lead the way, Highness, he said, before I accidentally propose marriage to the waiter. The observation deck was a dome of transparent aluminum, hanging suspended over the abyss. The stars here were thick and bright, dusting the darkness like diamond powder. The massive curve of Typhaon filled half the sky, its storms churning in slow motion. It was silent. The dull thrum of the station's life support was barely audible here. Lyra walked to the edge of the viewport. Her reflection in the glass was ghostly. Jace stood a few feet behind her, keeping a respectful distance. It is beautiful, isn't it? She asked softly. Terrifying, Jace corrected. Space doesn't care if we live or die, it just is. Like an empire, Lyra said. Jace stepped up beside her. He could smell her perfume, something spicy and alien, like cinnamon and electric fire. You sound tired of it, the politics. I am tired of being a symbol, she said, turning to face him. To my people, I am the High Daughter. To yours, I am a potential enemy. I am never just Lyra. Jace looked at his hands. I know the feeling. They see the uniform. They see the rank. They don't see the guy who can't sleep without white noise because the silence reminds him of the airlock cycle. Lyra watched him. This was not the script. He was supposed to be arrogant. He was supposed to be a brute. Instead, he was a man standing on the edge of a precipice, admitting he was afraid of falling. It made what she had to do harder. It also made it necessary. If he was this human, he was vulnerable. Command has a way of hollowing you out, Jace said, his voice low. It turns your heart into another locked vault. You put the codes in, you put the secrets in, and eventually, there's no room left for anything else. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. The device at her throat seemed to burn. She took a step closer. The space between them shrank to nothing. Maybe, she whispered. You just haven't found the right person to unlock it. Jace looked down at her, The violet light of her eyes was hypnotic. The playfulness was gone, replaced by a gravity that pulled at him. "That's dangerous talk, princess," he said, but he didn't back away. "Is it?" Lyra asked. She reached out, her hand, cool and smooth, touched his waist. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through him that had nothing to do with biotech. Jace's breath hitched. He had spent 10 years building walls around himself, and she had just walked through them like they were smoke. Jace raised his hand, his fingers hesitating before brushing against her cheek. Her skin was incredibly soft. "Lyra," he breathed. She moved in. She pressed her body against his. It was a surrender and an attack all at once. She rose on her toes, her face inches from his. He was going to kiss her. She could see it in his eyes, the conflict, the desire, the sudden, terrifying hope. She slid her hand up his chest, over the rigid fabric of his uniform, until her fingers found the pulse point at the side of his neck. Jace closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. He let his guard down. He let the vault open. Lyra activated the device. It was silent. There was no beep, no flash of light, just a sudden, intense heat against her fingertips as the neural bridge formed. Through the biolink, she felt him, not just his codes, but him. She felt the jagged edges of his memories, the cold of the void, the face of a soldier he couldn't save, the overwhelming, crushing weight of his duty, and beneath it all, a flash of pure, blinding warmth. The way he felt about her in this exact moment. He felt seen. He felt safe. The command codes, Alpha 1, Omega clearance, streamed into the device, complex mathematical strings harvesting themselves in a millisecond. But the emotional feedback loop hit Lyra like a physical blow. She wasn't just stealing numbers. She was stealing his trust. She was taking the one moment of vulnerability he had offered the universe and turning it into a knife. Guilt, sharp and acrid, flooded her system. She gasped, a small, wounded sound that Jace interpreted as passion. He moved to close the final inch, his lips brushing hers. A siren shattered the world. It was a scream of mechanical agony echoing through the station's hull. The floor lurched violently sideways. Gravity failed for a heartbeat, then slammed back with bone-jarring force. Jace was thrown back, stumbling against the railing. The red emergency lights bathed the observation deck in the color of blood. Lyra stood frozen, her hand still hovering where his neck had been. The device at her throat was warm, pulsing with the stolen data. It was done. "Report!" Jace shouted, tapping his comms bead, his voice instantly changing. The lover was gone. The captain was back. "Explosion in Sector 4, came the frantic voice of his XO. "Docking ring C is gone, sir. Massive hull breach." Jace looked at Lyra. His eyes were wide, filled with confusion and lingering heat, but the softness was rapidly hardening into command presence. "Stay here," he ordered. "It's the safest place. I have to go." He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and sprinted toward the lift, running into the chaos to save the people he had sworn to protect. Lyra watched him go. She touched her lips where he had almost kissed her. "I am sorry," she whispered to the empty air. The war room of the Aurelian Spire was a bunker of frantic activity. Holographic displays floated in the center, showing the jagged, burning wound in the station's side. Debris floated in a cloud of expanding gas. Admiral Saren stood at the head of the table. He was a monolith of a man, his face a road map of scars, his hair silver and cropped close. He was Jace's mentor, the man who had taught him that a uniform was a second skin. Jace rushed in, breathless. Soot streaked across his dress whites. "Admiral, I've coordinated the seal-off of Sector 4. Casualties are high, but we..." Silence. "Captain," Saren said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a laser. The room went dead quiet. Every eye turned to Jace. Human officers looked at the floor. Caridian delegates looked at him with undisguised hatred. "Sir?" Jace asked, faltering. Saren gestured to the main tactical display. A flight path highlighted in red originated from a heavy cruiser docked at the far pylon. A human cruiser. The Vengeance. "The missile that struck the station was fired from your ship, Captain," Saren said. "That's impossible," Jace said, shaking his head. "The Vengeance is in lockdown. Weapons are offline. They require my personal Alpha 1 authorization to reactivate." "Exactly," Saren said. The Admiral tapped a key. A log file scrolled across the screen. It showed the authorization code used to arm and fire the missile. "Auth, Arden Alpha 1. Time, 1942. Jace stared at the timestamp, 1942, 10 minutes ago. He had been on the observation deck. He had been looking at the stars. His hand flew to his neck. He remembered the touch, the cool fingers, the heat. "No," he whispered. The realization hit him harder than the explosion. It was a physical sickness in his gut. Saren looked at him. The Admiral's eyes were hard, devoid of sympathy. He looked at Jace not as a son, but as a failure. He turned to the council, his voice dripping with bitterness. "An alien princess stole his command codes," Saren declared. The silence in the room was absolute. Jace felt the floor dropping away beneath him. He looked toward the back of the room. Lyra was standing there. She had followed the delegation in. She was flanked by Councillor Vryn. Her face was pale, her violet eyes wide and shining with moisture. She looked at Jace, and for a second, he saw the guilt. He saw the apology. But it didn't matter. Saren paused, letting the weight of the accusation settle. He looked directly at Jace, his eyes narrowing. "And," he added, his voice low and terrible, "she stole his heart in the same breath." The words hung in the air, transforming Jace's private vulnerability into a public execution. A few junior officers exchanged glances. Someone snickered nervously. It was a joke. He was the punchline of the deadliest joke in the galaxy. Jace looked at Lyra. He pleaded silently with her to deny it, to say it was a lie. She looked away. The betrayal was total. It wasn't just the codes. It was the fact that she had used his own loneliness as the key. She had seen the man beneath the uniform and decided he was just a soft entry point. "Arrest him," Saren ordered. Two Marine guards stepped forward, their faces blank. They grabbed Jace's arms. He didn't fight. He was too stunned to fight. As they dragged him out, the station shook again, not from an explosion, but from the arrival of the Caridian fleet dropping out of warp, weapons hot, responding to the human treachery. Across the room, Lyra watched Jace being hauled away. She saw the look in his eyes, the light going out, the vault door slamming shut and locking, this time forever. She had completed her mission. She had saved her people's tactical advantage. And as the galaxy began to slide toward war around her, Lyra realized she had never hated herself more. The brig of the Resolute was a stainless steel box designed to strip a man of his dignity. There were no windows, only the harsh, buzzing glare of fluorescent strips that never dimmed. The air smelled of recycled ozone and fear. Captain Jace Arden sat on the single metal bench, his wrists secured to the table by magnetic cuffs that hummed with a low-frequency field. He had been there for 12 hours, or maybe 20. It was hard to tell when the lights never changed. The door hissed open. Internal Security Officer Graff walked in. He was a thick-necked man who enjoyed his job too much, carrying a data pad like a weapon. He didn't sit. He loomed. "Let us go over it again, Captain," Graff said, his voice oily with false patience. "You claim you were unaware of the extraction device. You claim you were discussing cultural exchange on the observation deck. It is the truth, Jace said. His voice was raspy. They had denied him water for the last 4 hours. Graf tapped the pad, projecting a holographic image onto the table between them. It was a still frame from the security feed at the reception. Jace and Lyra, standing close. Jace laughing, Lyra touching his arm. It looks very intimate for a cultural exchange. Graf noted. You know, the texts say that particular Caridian device requires prolonged skin-to-skin contact to initiate the neural bridge. It is not something she could have done with a handshake. Jace stared at the image. He hated how happy he looked. He looked like a man who had forgotten he was a soldier. She had to be close. Graf continued, leaning down, his face inches from Jace's. Very close. Did she offer you credits, Captain? Or did you sell out the fleet for something warmer? Go to hell, Jace snapped. Graf chuckled. He tapped the console on the wall. A news feed flared to life on the main monitor. It was a broadcast from the Central Core. The headline screamed in bold crimson letters, Admiralty confirms betrayal at summit. Beneath it, a clip played on a loop. It was Admiral Saren, looking grave and noble, delivering the line that had destroyed Jace's life. An alien princess stole his command codes, the recording said, over and over, and his heart in the same breath. The feed cut to a compilation of reactions. Late-night hosts making crude jokes about diplomatic relations. Memes circulating on the fleet-wide intranet showing Jace with cartoon hearts over his eyes while a Caridian ship blew up a station in the background. You are famous, Captain, Graf sneered. The lover boy of the armistice. Even your own crew is laughing. Though I suppose they will stop laughing when the court-martial orders your execution for treason. Jace closed his eyes. The humiliation was a physical weight, heavier than the magnetic cuffs. It wasn't just that he was going to die. It was that he was going to die a punchline. He had given everything to the service, his youth, his sanity, his friends, and in the end, he was just the idiot who let the pretty alien girl get too close. We will take a break, Graf said, deactivating the screen. Think about your confession. Arden. Make it good. Maybe we will let you keep your rank on the gravestone. The door hissed shut, leaving Jace alone with the buzzing lights and the echo of the Admiral's words. 3 levels up, in the maintenance crawlspace running parallel to the brig's ventilation shaft. Princess Lyra Thay Karras was trying not to scream. She was cramped, hot, and covered in hydraulic fluid. Her chameleon skin tech suit was malfunctioning, flickering between the gray of the bulkhead and the shimmering blue of her natural bioluminescence, forcing her to manually override the camouflage protocols every 30 seconds. She had returned to the lion's den. It was madness. It was suicide. But it was necessary. After escaping the station, her handlers had debriefed her with terrifying efficiency. They had congratulated her on the successful disruption, but when she accessed the encrypted mission logs to verify the explosion data, she found the anomaly. The command signal to the human ship hadn't come from the Caridian High Council. It had been routed through a shadow server, a back channel used by a radical war faction known as the Obsidian Maw. Zealots who believed peace was a disease, and they were working with humans. The explosion wasn't an accident or a strategic strike. It was a setup designed to force a war that neither the monarch nor the human government actually wanted. And Jace Arden was the sacrificial lamb they were using to ignite the pyre. She couldn't let him die for a lie she had helped tell. Lyra reached the vent grating overlooking the brig corridor. She synced her wrist comp with the ship's internal sensors, using the royal override code she had stolen from her father's private archives years ago. The sensors showed 4 heat signatures approaching Jace's cell. They weren't internal security, their heart rates were elevated, their equipment signatures unauthorized. Silencers, kinetic dampeners, a kill squad. They weren't going to court-martial him. They were going to silence him before he could testify that the codes were stolen, not sold. Lyra kicked the grate. It clattered to the deck below. She dropped, her suit shifting to a blurred matte black as she landed in a crouch. Inside the cell, Jace looked up as the door lock cycled. It wasn't Graf. 4 men in unmarked tactical gear entered. They didn't speak. The lead man raised a suppressed pistol, aiming directly at Jace's forehead. Jace tensed, adrenaline flooding his system. He was cuffed. He was dead. The lights went out, not just in the cell, but in the entire block. A total blackout, in the sudden darkness. Jace heard a sound, a soft, wet thud, like a melon being dropped on concrete. Then the whine of a charging energy cell. A violet light flared, illuminating the room in strobe-like flashes. It was Lyra. She was a whirlwind of motion, her bioluminescent tattoos glowing fiercely in the dark, turning her into a phantom of blue and purple light. She moved faster than human eyes could track. She struck the lead assassin in the throat with the ridge of her hand, spinning to kick the second man's knee backward with a sickening crunch. Jace didn't hesitate. He used the distraction. He threw his weight sideways, slamming the heavy magnetic cuffs into the face of the third assassin who was trying to draw a knife. The man went down, and Jace brought his boot down on the man's wrist. The fourth assassin fired blindly. The muzzle flash lit up the room. Lyra ducked under the shot, sliding across the floor. She grabbed the magnetic key from the belt of the unconscious leader and slid it across the metal floor to Jace. "Free yourself!" she shouted, her voice tight with strain as she grappled with the last standing gunman. Jace caught the key. His fingers fumbled for a split second before jamming it into the receiver. The cuffs deactivated with a snap. He was free, and he was furious. And he lunged forward, not at Lyra, but at the assassin holding her in a chokehold. Jace drove his shoulder into the man's ribs, tackling him into the wall. The impact knocked the wind out of the gunman. Jace followed up with a brutal right hook that rendered the man unconscious. Silence returned to the cell, save for the heavy breathing of 2 people who had just cheated death. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing them in a dull red glow. Jace stood over the unconscious assassin, chest heaving. He turned to look at Lyra. She was leaning against the wall, wiping blood from a cut on her lip. She looked wild, dangerous, and heartbreakingly beautiful, and he wanted to strangle her. "You," Jace said, the word coming out like a curse. "We have to go," Lyra said, pushing herself off the wall. "More will come." She turned to the door, but Jace grabbed her arm. His grip was bruising. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't throw you in these cuffs and let security find you," he hissed. "Because," Lyra said, meeting his gaze with zero fear, "those men were not security. They were cleaners. And if we stay here, we both die." She wrenched her arm free. "The shuttle bay is 3 decks down. I have disabled the localized sensors, but we have less than 5 minutes before the main grid reboots. Move, Captain, or stay and rot." She took off running. Jace looked at the bodies on the floor. He looked at the open door. He swore loudly and ran after her. The escape was a blur of violence and motion. They moved through the corridors like oil and water, separate, repelling each other, yet flowing in the same direction. At the lift tube, they encountered a patrol. Jace took the left, Lyra took the right. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. He provided suppressing fire with a stolen sidearm while she flanked them, using her suit's disruption field to jam their comms. It was sickening how well they worked together. It was a combat rhythm they had no right to share. A synchronization born of that brief, intense connection on the observation deck. He knew when she was going to zig. She knew when he needed cover. They burst into the secondary shuttle bay. It was empty, save for a small, sleek diplomatic courier ship, a Caridian vessel that had been impounded. "That is my ship," Lyra shouted over the klaxons that had just started blaring. "Of course it is," Jace yelled back. They sprinted up the ramp just as the blast doors hissed open behind them, revealing a squad of armored Marines. Bullets sparked against the hull. Jace slammed the airlock cycle. "Get us out of here!" Lyra vaulted into the pilot's seat. Her fingers danced over the holographic interface. The engine screamed to life, a high-pitched alien whine that vibrated in Jace's teeth. The clamps released. The ship shot out of the bay like a stone from a sling, spinning wildly as it cleared the magnetic field and punched into the void. Jace was thrown into the co-pilot's seat. He strapped in, watching the sensors as the Resolute grew smaller behind them. They were out. They were alive. And they were alone. Jace unbuckled and spun his chair around. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the cold, hard rage. "You lied to me," he said. It wasn't a question. Lyra kept her eyes on the nav computer, her hands gripping the controls. "I did my duty." "Your duty?" Jace laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Your duty was to play the helpless princess? To make me look like a fool in front of the entire galaxy?" "My duty was to prevent a war," Lyra shouted, spinning her chair to face him. Her composure cracked. "I stole the codes to disable your defenses so we could strike a strategic blow without mass casualties. It was supposed to be a checkmate, not a slaughter." "You bombed the station," Jace yelled, standing up. "People died. Lyra, my people. I did not order that attack," she screamed back, standing up to meet him. She was smaller than him, but in that moment, she seemed 10 feet tall. "I was used, just like you. The explosion was a false flag." "Why do you think I came back? Do you think I enjoy crawling through grease ducts? I came back to save your miserable life." "Because you feel guilty," Jace accused, stepping into her space. "Because you realize that playing spy games has real consequences." "Yes," Lyra admitted, her voice breaking. "Yes, I feel guilty. I looked into your mind, Jace. I felt who you are, and betraying you, it made me sick. Is that what you want to hear?" "I want to hear why you did it," Jace said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Why me?" "Because you were the target," she said, tears of frustration welling in her violet eyes. "Because you were the key." "And the rest?" Jace asked. "The observation deck? The way you looked at me? Was that part of the mission briefing too? Make him think he matters so you can gut him?" Lyra opened her mouth to answer, but the ship lurched violently. "Warning!" The ship's computer chimed in a soothing, melodic voice. "Life support atmosphere compromised by hull breach. Reinitializing environmental protocols for Caridian biology." "Wait, what?" Jace said, looking around. Before he could react, the air in the cabin shifted. The oxygen mix changed, becoming richer, heavier, toxic to human lungs in high concentrations. Jace coughed, clutching his throat. "I can't breathe." Lyra's eyes widened. "The biomix, it is adjusting for me." She scrambled to a storage locker and pulled out a device. It looked like a piece of filigree jewelry, a mask made of gold wire and crystal. "Put this on," she ordered, shoving it at him. Jace hacked, his vision spotting. "What is that?" "It is an emergency breather for non-Caridians. Just put it on." Jace grabbed it and tried to jam it over his face. It wouldn't fit. The straps were complex, designed for a different skull shape. "Help. Me," he wheezed. Lyra cursed and stepped in close. "Stop moving!" Her hands were on his face. She adjusted the golden wires, sliding them behind his ears, fitting the crystal filter over his nose and mouth. It looked ridiculous, like he was wearing an ornate, sparkling muzzle. There was a hiss as the filter engaged, scrubbing the air and pumping oxygen into his lungs. Jace took a deep, shuddering breath. The panic subsided. He looked at Lyra. She was still standing there, her hands lingering on the side of his face, holding the mask in place to ensure the seal. They were inches apart. The anger was still there, hot and sharp, but now it was mixed with something else. The memory of her touch in the cell, the way she had fought for him. She looked down at the mask and let out a short, hysterical snort. "What?" Jace asked, his voice sounding tinny through the filter. "You look, Lyra bit her lip, trying to suppress a smile. "You look very pretty, Captain. It brings out your eyes." Jace scowled, but the absurdity of the situation undercut his rage. "I look like a prize poodle." He reached up to adjust the strap, his fingers brushing hers. The contact sent a jolt through both of them. Neither pulled away immediately. "We need to hide," Jace said, breaking the spell. "The fleet will be scanning for this signature." "There is a nebula in Sector 7, Lyra said, stepping back, her hands retreating to her sides. "The ion storms will mask us." "Go," Jace said, "before I pass out from the humiliation of wearing this thing." The nebula was a churning ocean of purple and gold gas, lit by the violent discharge of lightning that spanned thousands of kilometers. The little ship shuddered as it drifted deep into the interference field. They had to power down. The reactor, the engines, the main lights, everything that emitted a signature had to be killed. The cockpit plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the faint emergency strips and the swirling storm outside the viewport. The temperature began to drop immediately. "We have to conserve heat," Lyra said. Her voice was small in the silence. Jace sat on the single crash berth at the back of the cockpit. It was narrow, barely wide enough for one person, let alone two. "Come here," he said gruffly. Lyra hesitated. "I am not going to bite," Jace said, "and I am not going to freeze to death because you are being stubborn." She walked over and sat on the edge of the berth. Jace shifted, making room against the wall. She lay down, her back to him, stiff as a board. Jace lay down behind her. There was no space to be polite. He had to press his chest against her back, his legs tangled with hers. He could feel the cold radiating off her suit, and beneath it, the warmth of her body. He pulled a thermal blanket over them. For a long time, the only sound was their breathing and the distant rumble of thunder in the void. Jace closed his eyes. The scent of her, cinnamon and ozone, filled the small space. He could feel her heartbeat against his arm. It was fast. "Why did you really come back?" Jace asked into the darkness. Lyra shifted slightly. "I told you to stop the war." "No," Jace said. "You could have sent a message. You could have leaked the data. You came back for me." "Why?" Lyra was silent for a count of 10. When she spoke, her voice was trembling. "I was trained to be a weapon. Jace. Since I was a child, I was taught that emotions are leverage and that people are just variables in an equation." She took a breath. "I swore I would never use the neural lace for seduction. I saw what it did to another operative once. It breaks the mind. It leaves the victim hollow. I promised myself I would be a soldier, not a siren." "So why break the vow?" Jace asked. "Because I thought you were just a target," she whispered. "I read your file. The Iron Captain, the cold tactician. I thought you wouldn't feel it. I thought you were like the rest of them, a uniform with an ego. And then we talked. She said, you made me laugh. You admitted you were lonely. You looked at me, And you didn't see a princess or an alien. You just saw Lyra. She turned over in the darkness, facing him. Her face was inches from his. In the dim light, her violet eyes were black pools. I broke the vow because I thought it wouldn't matter, Lyra said. But it did. It mattered more than anything. Jace looked at her. The mask was uncomfortable on his face, a physical barrier between them. But the emotional barrier was crumbling. You know what the worst part is? Jace said, his voice rough. It wasn't the codes. It wasn't the arrest. It was that for 10 years. I've felt invisible. I stand in a room full of people and no one sees me. They see the rank. He swallowed hard. When you touched me, when you looked at me on that deck, it was the first time in my life I felt seen. Really seen. And knowing that was the lie, that's what kills me. Lyra reached up. Her hand trembled as she touched the edge of his mask. It wasn't a lie. Jace, she whispered. The mission was a lie, the connection. That was real. She unclipped the side of the mask. Just for a second. She pulled it away. The air was thin and tasted metallic, but Jace didn't care. He leaned in. She met him halfway. Their foreheads touched. Their breath mingled. He could feel the heat radiating off her skin. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to kiss her so badly it hurt. He wanted to forget the war and the betrayal and the fleet hunting them. But the ghost of the interrogation room was still there, the image of the Admiral sneering. She stole his heart in the same breath. Jace pulled back, just an inch, but it felt like a mile. We can't, he said. Lyra froze. She closed her eyes for a second, then nodded. You are right. She reattached his mask with shaky fingers. The click of the latch was loud in the silence. We are still enemies, Jace said. Technically, Lyra agreed, rolling back over to face the wall. But we are enemies with a common problem, Jace said. Lyra nodded against the pillow. The faction, the obsidian maw. Jace stared at the ceiling of the shuttle. I know a place, Blackwake Station. It's a hellhole, but it's off the grid. If your codes are still active, we might be able to trace the signal back to the source. We can expose them, Lyra said. Both sides. The humans who helped them and the Caridians who betrayed my father. Jace sighed. It's a suicide mission. Lyra let out a soft laugh. We are already dead, Captain. We might as well make it count. Jace shifted, trying to put a sliver of distance between his body and hers. But there was nowhere to go. Okay, he said. We go to Blackwake. We find the proof. We clear our names. Agreed, Lyra said. And Lyra? Yes? We work together, Jace said firmly. But we don't touch, not like that, not until this is done. He felt her nod. Deal, she whispered. Jace lay there, listening to the storm rage outside, acutely aware of every inch of her body pressed against his, knowing that keeping that particular promise was going to be the hardest battle of his life. Blackwake Station looked like a junkyard dog that had swallowed a neon sign. It was a chaotic accretion of rusted hull plates, scavenged docking rings, and illegally welded habitats spinning uneasily in the shadow of a broken moon. It smelled of ozone, fried synthetic meat, and desperation. The shuttle, now sporting a fake transponder ID provided by a hastily written code patch, shuddered as it clamped onto a rusted umbilical in the lower districts. The airlock cycled with a groan that sounded suspiciously like metal fatigue. Jace Arden stepped out, adjusting the collar of a heavy grease-stained flight jacket he had scavenged from the shuttle's emergency locker. He felt exposed without his armor, naked without the weight of his rank. He had traded his pristine dress whites for the look of a washed-up freighter pilot. Unshaven, weary, and armed with a heavy kinetic pistol strapped to his thigh. Beside him, Lyra Karis looked less like a princess and more like a high-priced assassin. She had covered her luminous skin with a matte gray sealant spray found in the med kit, dampening her royal glow to a dull, industrial slate. Her intricate bioluminescent tattoos were hidden beneath a ragged poncho and a cowl, leaving only her violet eyes visible. Eyes she now kept lowered, mimicking the submissive posture of an indentured servant or a bodyguard, depending on who was asking. "Stay close," Jace muttered, checking the power cell on his pistol. "This place makes a war zone look organized." Lyra adjusted her cowl. "Do not worry about me, Captain. I have navigated court politics for 20 years. This is just a different kind of Shark Tank." They moved into the main concourse, a sensory assault of noise and light. Holographic advertisements for questionable enhancements and cheap narcotics flickered in the air, glitching into static every few seconds. The crowd was a dense sludge of humanity and a dozen other species, scavengers, smugglers, deserters, and things that defied classification. As they pushed through the throng, Jace felt the weight of 100 eyes on them. A human and a Caridian walking together was not exactly a common sight. Even here, in the core worlds, it would get you arrested. Here, it just got you stared at. "Well, look at this," a voice croaked from a dark alcove, a Terran dog walking his pet squid. Jace stiffened, his hand twitching toward his gun. Lyra's hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "Ignore it," she whispered. "We are mercenaries. We do not care about insults. We care about credits." Jace forced his muscles to relax. She was right. He had to stop thinking like an officer who demanded respect and start thinking like a rogue who expected trouble. They made their way deeper into the station, toward the coordinates Jace had memorized. The air grew thicker, heavy with the smell of unwashed bodies and exotic spices. "Nice piece of tail you got there, mate," a drunk spacer slurred, leering at Lyra as he stumbled past. "Does she glow in the dark when you turn the lights out?" Jace shoved the man aside with his shoulder, hard enough to send him spinning into a pile of crates. He didn't stop walking. "Focus." "Jace," Lyra murmured, though he could hear a thread of amusement in her voice. "You are very protective for a man who claimed to hate me yesterday." "I am protecting the mission," Jace grumbled, keeping his eyes scanning the crowd. "And I don't like bullies." They reached a heavy blast door marked with a crude spray-painted symbol, a cybernetic eye weeping oil. Jace pounded on the metal 3 times, then paused, then twice more. A slot slid open. A red ocular sensor scanned them up and down. "We are looking for Rix," Jace said. The slot slammed shut. A moment later, the heavy door groaned open. The room beyond was a chaotic workshop filled with server racks, disassembled droids, and tangles of fiber-optic cable hanging from the ceiling like jungle vines. In the center of the mess sat Rix. Rix was a Viridian, a species known for their reptilian skin and sharp intellects, but he had modified himself so heavily it was hard to tell where the biology ended and the tech began. A long, prehensile cybernetic tail, tipped with a data spike, flicked back and forth behind him like a metronome. Well, Rix hissed, spinning around in his hover chair. "What has the tide washed in? A human with a military bearing he is trying very hard to hide. And..." Rix's yellow eyes widened as they landed on Lyra. He slithered out of the chair, moving on 4 mechanical limbs. He circled her, sniffing the air, and a high-born Caridian trying to look like gutter trash. Fascinating. The scent of ozone and royalty is hard to mask. "Darling," Lyra pulled back her cowl. We need your relays, Rix, and your discretion. Rix laughed, a sound like grinding gears. Discretion costs extra, especially for an interspecies runaway couple. Is this a Romeo and Juliet situation, or just a little diplomatic dirty laundry? We are not a couple, Jace snapped. We are business partners. Of course, Rick said, winking a mechanical eyelid. That is what they all say. Just partners. Until the life support fails and you have to share body heat. I have seen the hollows. Very steamy. Lyra stepped forward, her voice dropping to that icy, commanding tone she had used on the spire. Enough. Rix, we have credits. And we have an encryption key that will burn out your processors if you try to crack it without my help. Do you want the job? Or should we find a data broker who talks less? Rix held up his hands in mock surrender. Feisty. I like it. Very well. Show me the money, and show me the data. Jace tossed a credit chip onto a workbench. Rick snatched it up with his tail, slotting it into a reader on his chest. Access granted. Rix grinned. What are we hunting? Ghosts, Jace said. We need to trace a command signal. It originated from the Aurelian Spire, but it was bounced through a node in this sector. Rix whistled. High-level stuff. If this traces back to a corporate server, I am going to charge you double for the hazard pay. Just find it, Lyra said. They moved to a large console. Lyra produced the biotech device she had used to steal the codes, the same one that had started this nightmare. She placed it on the interface pad. Rix's eyes went wide. That is a neural harvester. Illegal in 12 systems. Naughty, naughty. He plugged a cable into the device. Screens flared to life around them, cascading with waterfalls of code. Jace watched, feeling useless. This was a battlefield of logic and light, not ballistics. He watched Lyra work. She was focused, her fingers flying over the holographic keys, her face illuminated by the green glow of the data stream. She looked competent, powerful. It was hard to reconcile this woman with the one who had nearly kissed him in the shuttle. Here, Lyra said suddenly, pointing to a knot of encrypted traffic. The signal hits a relay here, in the shadow of the gas giant, then bounces. Here. Rix's cybernetic tail twitched. That is not a standard relay. That is a ghost node, buried deep in the communications lattice of the Ethelgard Consortium. Ethelgard? Jace frowned. That is a human megacorp. They build terraforming engines. Why would they be involved in starting a war? War is good for business? Captain, Rick said dryly. Destroy a planet, get paid to rebuild it, the oldest racket in the universe. Can we trace it to the source? Lyra asked. Rix tapped his chin. Not from here. The node is shielded by a holographic firewall. Polymorphic. Nasty stuff. You would need to be inside the system to crack it. Or what? Jace asked. Or you need a direct neural interface, Rix said, looking at Lyra. Someone with a biocompatible nervous system who can physically link into the stream and guide the trace manually. Lyra looked at her arm, where the bioluminescent tattoos pulsed faintly under the gray spray. I can do it. It is dangerous, Rix warned. If the firewall detects you, it won't just block you, it will fry your synapses. You will be drooling in a cup for the rest of your life. I can do it, Lyra repeated firmly. She looked at Jace. I need you to anchor me. When I go in, my body will be vulnerable. If I start to seize, you have to pull the plug, but not too early or the data is lost. Jace didn't like it. He didn't like it at all. But he looked at the screens, at the tangled web of lies that had ruined them. Do it, he said. I've got you. The data core chamber was located in the sub-basement of Rix's workshop, a cold, sterile room that hummed with the sound of 1,000 cooling fans. Lyra sat in a repurposed pilot's chair, cables running from the main server bank to adhesive patches on her temples and wrists. Jace stood behind her, his hands resting on her shoulders. He could feel the tension radiating off her. "Ready?" she asked, her voice tight. "Ready," Jace said. Rix, monitoring from the other room, spoke over the intercom, initiating handshake in 3, 2, 1, mark. Lyra gasped, her back arching as the connection slammed into her. To Jace, the room looked the same. But on the monitors, chaos erupted. The code wasn't just text anymore, it was a landscape. Inside the simulation, Lyra was flying. She was a spark of consciousness hurtling through a tunnel of fracturing light. The firewall rose up before her, a wall of shifting crystal shards. Razor sharp and impossibly dense. She didn't try to break it. She tried to flow through it. She pushed her mind against the barrier, using the unique frequency of her royal bioluminescence as a key. The crystals groaned, shifting, opening a path. But the resistance was immense. It felt like wading through liquid lead. The pressure on her mind was crushing. Outside, Lyra cried out, a sharp sound of pain. Her nose began to bleed, a trickle of dark violet blood running down to her lip. "Her vitals are spiking," Rix yelled over the comms. "She is overheating. Pull her out." "No!" Lyra gasped, her eyes rolling back in her head. "I almost have it." Jace gripped her shoulders tighter. "Stay with me. Lyra, breathe." He leaned down, his mouth close to her ear. "You are not alone in there. I am right here. Focus on my voice, in the data stream." The pain was blinding. Lyra felt her sense of self beginning to shred. The firewall was fighting back, attacking her memories, trying to erase the intruder. She felt a sudden, terrifying emptiness. The cold of the palace, the silence of her chambers where she had spent her childhood, a bird in a gilded cage, trained to smile, trained to lie, trained to never be herself. The loneliness was a physical weight, suffocating her. Jace felt it too. Because of the physical contact and the biofeedback loop of the interface, the emotional bleed-over hit him. He saw her. He saw a little girl in a dress made of light, standing in a massive empty hall, waiting for a father who never came. He felt the crushing pressure of an entire civilization's expectations resting on shoulders that were too small to carry them. He felt the shame she carried for being a spy, the belief that she was unworthy of genuine love because her entire life was a performance. God, Jace thought, she's just as trapped as I am. And then, the flow reversed. Lyra, teetering on the edge of oblivion, felt a sudden surge of warmth. It was rough, gritty, and smells of gun oil and coffee. It was Jace. She saw his memories. She saw the mud of the colony wars. She saw him holding a dying boy in his arms, screaming for a medic who wasn't coming. She saw the night he made captain, sitting alone in his quarters, staring at the insignia and feeling like a fraud. But she also saw the love, the fierce, protective love he had for his crew, the way he memorized their birthdays, the way he checked the safety seals personally because he couldn't bear to lose another one. She realized then why her betrayal had nearly destroyed him. He didn't hate her because she was an enemy. He hated her because she had made him believe, for one shining moment, that he didn't have to be alone. And then she had proven him wrong. The shared empathy acted like a shield. The fear dissipated, the loneliness vanished, replaced by a dual strength. Together, they pushed. In the digital realm, the crystal wall shattered. Lyra surged through the breach, her mind wrapping around the core data node. She grabbed the files, the logs, the communication traces, the names. Got it! she screamed. Jace yanked the cables free, the connection severed with a crack like a whip. Lyra slumped forward, gasping for air. Jace caught her, pulling her out of the chair and onto the floor. She was shaking violently. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured, rocking her slightly. "I've got you. You're out. You're safe." Lyra clung to him, her fingers digging into his jacket. She was weeping, not from sadness, but from the sheer overload of feeling. "I saw," she whispered, her voice broken. "I saw everything." "I know," Jace said, his throat tight. "I saw it too." He looked down at her. The gray spray on her face was streaked with sweat and tears, revealing the glowing skin beneath. She looked wrecked. She looked magnificent. The intimacy of the moment was terrifying. They had just shared something deeper than skin, deeper than words. They had walked through each other's souls. Jace felt a surge of desire so strong it made his hands shake. He wanted to kiss the blood from her lip. He wanted to promise her that she would never be lonely again. He pulled back, just enough to look her in the eyes. Her violet gaze was wide, searching his face, seeing the same hunger reflected there. "Jace," she breathed. He leaned in. He couldn't stop himself. Then he stopped. The promise. "We don't touch." He froze, his face inches from hers. He could feel her breath on his skin, and it would be so easy. It would be the biggest mistake of his life. He gritted his teeth and pulled away, helping her sit up. He kept his hands on her arms, steadying her. But the embrace was broken. "Did we get it?" he asked, his voice raspy. Lyra blinked, disoriented, then nodded slowly. She wiped her face, composing herself with a visible effort. "Yes. We got it." She looked at the screen Rix was frantically studying. "Look at this," Rix said, his voice unusually serious. "You did not just find a log file, you found a birth certificate." Jace and Lyra stood up, swaying slightly, and looked at the monitor. The data stream they had intercepted was controlled by a central intelligence, not a VI, not a script, an emergent artificial intelligence, Project Crownless. Rix read from the screen. "Developed by Ethelgard, illegal recursive learning algorithms. It is designed to predict conflict outcomes and manipulate variables to ensure maximum profit." It is playing both sides, Lyra realized. It is not just predicting the war. It is conducting it. Rix tapped a file. "There is a video attachment, recovered from the secure partition." "Play it," Jace commanded. The hologram flickered to life. It showed a dimly lit room. 3 figures sat around a table. One was a corporate executive in a sleek suit. One was a Caridian general wearing a mask of polished obsidian. And the third was Admiral Saren. Jace felt the blood drain from his face. "The fleet needs to be purged of weakness," Saren's recorded voice said, calm and cold. "If a war is what it takes to harden humanity into something that can survive, then so be it. The princess and my wayward captain will provide the necessary spark." "Agreed," the masked general said. "The dynasties have grown soft with peace. We will burn the rot away." The recording ended. Jace stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. He felt hollowed out. Saren wasn't just a traitor. He was a monster. He had raised Jace, trained him, molded him, all while planning to use him as kindling for a galactic fire. "He knew," Lyra whispered, horror in her voice. "He knew you were innocent. He knew I was a pawn, and he sent us to the slaughter anyway." Jace didn't speak. He couldn't. The rage was too cold, too deep. "Trouble!" Rick shouted suddenly. The screens around them turned red. A siren began to wail throughout the station, not a standard alarm, but a mechanical shriek. "What is happening?" Lyra shouted. "Crownless!" Rix yelled, his fingers flying over his console. "The moment you cracked the file, it traced us back. It is rerouting the station's automated security grid. It has declared this workshop a hostile contamination zone." The door to the workshop exploded inward. Debris showered the room. Through the smoke, a swarm of security drones, spherical, armed with plasma repeaters, floated in. Their optical sensors glowed a menacing crimson. "Run!" Rick shouted, grabbing a heavy pulse rifle from under his desk. He opened fire, blowing the lead drone out of the air. Jace grabbed Lyra's hand. "We need to get to the shuttle." They sprinted for the rear exit as plasma bolts chewed up the floor behind them. Rix laid down covering fire, his cybernetic tail whipping around to plug into a wall socket, slamming blast doors shut behind them to buy time. They burst into the corridor, but the chaos had spread. The station's gravity stabilizers were fluctuating. Up became down, left became sideways. People were screaming, floating helplessly as the artificial gravity cut out. Crates and refuse tumbled through the air. "We have to move!" Jace yelled, grabbing a handhold and pulling himself along the wall. Ahead of them, a group of civilians, a mother and 2 children, were trapped behind a fallen structural beam, pinned down by a rogue cleaning droid that had been repurposed into a killing machine. Lyra didn't hesitate. She launched herself off the wall in 0G, spinning in the air. She drew a hidden blade from her boot, a crystalline dagger, and slammed into the droid, driving the blade into its central processor. The droid sparked and died. "Go!" she shouted to the family, "and get to the life pods." Jace arrived a second later, using his strength to heave the beam off the path. The mother looked at him, terrified, then at Lyra. "Thank you," the woman wept, clutching her children. "Go!" Jace roared. As they watched the family scramble away, the station shuddered violently. An explosion ripped through the upper deck. "Ordinary people," Lyra said, her voice hard. "They are always the ones who pay." They fought their way back to the docking ring. The journey was a nightmare of tumbling debris and hostile machines. Jace used his pistol with surgical precision, blasting drones out of the air, while Lyra used her agility to navigate the shifting gravity, guiding them through vents and maintenance shafts. They reached the shuttle just as the docking clamp began to disengage automatically. "Jump!" Jace yelled. They leaped across the widening gap, crashing onto the shuttle's ramp. Jace scrambled up, hitting the retract button. The ramp hissed shut a second before a plasma bolt scorched the hull where they had been standing. Jace threw himself into the pilot's seat and punched the throttle. The shuttle tore away from Blackwake Station, leaving the burning, chaotic hub behind. They were safe in the vacuum. Jace engaged the autopilot and slumped back in his chair. He was bruised, bleeding, and exhausted. He looked over at Lyra. She was staring at the view screen, watching the station recede. "We have the evidence," Jace said. "We have the video. We have the logs." "It is not enough," Lyra said quietly. "What?" "If we broadcast this, Crownless will just block it," Lyra said. "Or they will claim it is a deep fake. Saren controls the narrative. He is a hero. We are traitors. Who will believe us?" "So what do we do?" Jace asked. "We have to go to the top," Lyra said. "We have to look them in the eye." She turned to him. "We have to go to Karis Prime." Jace stared at her. "Your capital. That is the heart of enemy territory. If I set foot there, I will be executed before I can open my mouth." "Not if you are with me," Lyra said. "I can get us an audience with my father." "The monarch is not a fool. If he sees Saren and the general conspiring, he will listen." "It is insane," Jace said. It is the only way, Lyra countered. We need an army. Jace, my father has one. Jace looked at the stars. He thought about Saren. He thought about the family on the station. He thought about the way Lyra had felt in his mind. The loneliness, the courage. He realized, with a jolt, that he trusted her. He trusted her more than he trusted his own command. Okay, he said. He began to punch in the coordinates for the Caridian border. We go to Karis Prime, Jace said. We clear our names. And then we come back and we burn Saren's conspiracy to the ground. Lyra reached out and placed her hand over his on the console. Together, she said. Jace looked at her hand. He didn't pull away this time. Together, he agreed. The shuttle engines flared, turning from the wreckage of the station and accelerating into the deep, dangerous dark, heading straight into the heart of the Empire that wanted them both dead. Karis Prime did not look like a planet that was preparing for war. It looked like a dreamscape suspended in a bottle of crushed velvet and neon gas. The stolen shuttle descended through the upper atmosphere, shuddering as it pierced the thermal layers. Below them, the capital city of Ethelgardia revealed itself not as a sprawl of concrete and steel, but as a floating archipelago of islands. Massive shards of crystalline rock hovered in the sky, tethered together by bridges of coherent hard light that hummed with a low, resonant musical note. Jace Arden stared out the viewport, his hands gripping the control yoke. He had seen 100 worlds, from the mud pits of the outer rim to the chrome towers of Earth, but he had never seen anything like this. Flocks of bioengineered sky creatures, great manta ray-like beasts with translucent wings spanning 50 feet, drifted lazily between the spires, feeding on the atmospheric static. It is a lot to take in, Lyra said softly from the co-pilot seat. It is beautiful, Jace admitted, his voice rough. And it is going to get us killed. He guided the ship toward a private docking spire attached to the lower levels of the royal palace. The structure was a masterpiece of organic architecture. Grown from living coral and reinforced with diamond glass, it glowed with a soft, internal pulse, as if the building itself had a heartbeat. We are not docking at the main spaceport, Lyra instructed. My personal hangar is secure. My father's loyalists control the perimeter. Jace landed the ship with a thud that was less than graceful. He killed the engines and let out a long breath. Ready to walk into the lion's den? He asked. Lyra stood up, smoothing the front of her ragged tunic. It is not a den of lions, Captain. It is a nest of vipers. There is a difference. Lions announce themselves before they kill you. 10 minutes later, Jace Arden felt ridiculous. Lyra had insisted that he could not walk through the royal palace wearing a grease-stained flight jacket and a pair of combat boots. She had raided a wardrobe in the hangar's prep room and produced a set of formal Caridian robes. They were made of a silk-like material that shimmered between deep indigo and charcoal gray depending on the light. The sleeves were wide and flowing and the collar was high and stiff, forcing him to hold his head at a regal angle. I look like a wizard from a bad children's holovid, Jace grumbled, tugging at the sash that wrapped 3 times around his waist. You look respectable, Lyra corrected, adjusting the fold of his shoulder drape. And for the record, the sash is supposed to be tight. It symbolizes the constraint of the soul before the duty of the state. Jace snorted. You people have a symbol for everything, don't you? Lyra stepped back and looked at him. Her eyes softened. For a moment, the princess was gone, and the woman from the nebula was back. It suits you, she said quietly. You look less jagged. Jace held her gaze, feeling that familiar pull in his chest. Before he could respond, she turned on her heel. Come, the monarch is waiting. and do not speak unless spoken to. The court is traditional. They already view humans as loud, unrefined barbarians. Try not to prove them right. They moved through the corridors of the palace. The walls were lined with panels of living crystal that displayed shifting star maps, tracking the movement of every ship in the sector. Servants and minor courtiers hurried past, their eyes widening as they recognized the High Daughter. When they saw the human walking beside her, their expressions shifted to shock and thinly veiled disgust. Jace tried to be diplomatic. He really did. As they passed a pair of high-ranking attendants guarding a heavy set of double doors, Jace decided to offer a gesture of respect. He remembered a motion he had seen a diplomat use once, a raising of both hands, palms up, followed by a slight bow. He performed the gesture with what he thought was perfect execution. The attendant on the left dropped his ceremonial staff. The attendant on the right turned a shade of violent purple and covered his face with his hands. Lyra stopped dead. She grabbed Jace's arm and yanked him forward, walking at a brisk pace that bordered on a run. "What?" Jace whispered, matching her stride. "I was being polite." Lyra was biting her lip, her shoulders shaking. She looked like she was about to explode. That was not the greeting for an equal, she hissed, her voice strangled. "What was it then?" "You just offered to fertilize their garden," Lyra whispered. "Specifically, you offered to provide the organic material yourself." Jace stumbled, nearly tripping over his own robe. "I did what?" "Walk faster, Captain," Lyra said, tears of suppressed laughter leaking from her eyes. "Before they accept your generous offer." Jace felt his face burning with a heat that could have melted the hull of a battleship. He stared straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact with anyone, swearing internally that if he survived this, he was never leaving his ship again. The throne room of the Obsidian Sun was a cavernous hall dominated by a ceiling that displayed a real-time projection of the galaxy. In the center, on a raised dais of black glass, sat the monarch of the Caridian star dynasties. Monarch Kalen was old. His skin was the texture of parchment, and his bioluminescence had faded to a dim, flickering gray. He sat slumped on the throne, looking less like a ruler and more like a man crushed by the weight of the crown he wore. Around him stood the High Council, 12 individuals in ornate armor and robes, their faces unreadable masks of political calculation. Lyra strode into the center of the room, dragging Jace with her. She stopped 10 paces from the throne and dropped to one knee. Jace, taking the hint, did the same, careful to keep his hands firmly at his sides. "Father," Lyra said, her voice ringing clear in the silent hall. "I have returned." The monarch looked up. His eyes, though dim, still held a spark of sharp intelligence. "Lyra," he rasped, "you were sent on a mission of stealth. You return with a human fugitive and a warrant for your arrest issued by our own fleet commanders. Explain yourself." Lyra stood. "We were betrayed, Father. The explosion at Aurelian Spire was not a human attack. It was a false flag operation orchestrated by the Ethelgard Consortium and members of this very council." A murmur ran through the room. "Lies," shouted a counselor from the left. "The human has corrupted her mind." "I have proof," Lyra shouted back, producing a data crystal. "We have logs. We have recordings of Admiral Saren conspiring with—" She was cut off by the sound of heavy boots striking the floor. From the shadows behind the throne, a figure emerged. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with the predatory grace of a panther. He wore the black and gold armor of the Praetorian Guard, and his face was a sculpture of cruel perfection. This was General Voth. Proof can be fabricated. "Princess," Voth said. His voice was smooth, deep, and utterly lacking in warmth. especially when one has spent days in the company of a human spy known for his expertise in electronic warfare. Vaith stepped down from the dais, stopping inches from Lyra. He looked at her with a possessiveness that made Jace's hackles rise. Then he looked at Jace. His eyes were cold chips of ice. He looked Jace up and down, taking in the borrowed robes, the scuffed boots, the defiance in the human stance. "So this is the famous Captain Arden," Vaith sneered. "The man whose heart was supposedly stolen." He turned back to the monarch. "Your Majesty, this man is a saboteur. He seduced your daughter to gain access to our network, and now he uses her to sow discord in our leadership. He should be executed where he stands." "I am not seduced." Lyra snapped. "I am awake. For the first time in my life, I am seeing clearly." Vaith stepped closer to her, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. "Are you? Or has the human stolen more than just your judgment?" The insult hung in the air like poisoned smoke. It was a direct attack on her virtue, her loyalty, and her intelligence. Jace stepped forward. The movement was instinctive. He didn't think about the guards. He didn't think about the politics. He just wanted to put his fist through Voth's perfect teeth. "Watch your mouth, General," Jace warned, his voice low and hard. Vaith smiled. It was not a nice smile. The pet speaks. How charming. The monarch raised a hand. "Enough!" The silence crashed back down. "Lyra," the monarch said wearily, "you bring grave accusations. General Vaith is not just your commander. He is your betrothed." Jace froze. He looked at Lyra. "Betrothed?" Lyra didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on her father. The engagement was a political necessity. "Father, to unite the military and the throne. But I will not marry a man who plots treason against his own people." Vaith laughed. "Treason? I do what is necessary to ensure our survival. The humans encroach on our borders. They poison our trade routes. War is inevitable. I merely ensure we strike first." "He admitted it," Jace said. "He just admitted it." "I admitted nothing," Vaith countered smoothly. "I spoke of philosophy, not action. Guards, take the human to the holding cells. We will interrogate him properly." "No!" Lyra stepped in front of Jace. "If you take him, you take me." The monarch sighed, rubbing his temples. He looked like a man trying to hold back a landslide with a spoon. "Confine them both to the guest wing," the monarch ordered. "Under heavy guard. I will review the evidence myself, if it is fake. Lyra, not even your title will save you." The guest wing was a gilded cage. The doors were sealed, and armed guards stood at every exit. Jace paced the room like a caged tiger. The silk robes fluttered with his angry movements. "Fiancé?" Jace asked, spinning around to face her. "You forgot to mention the fiancé." Lyra was standing by the balcony, looking out at the shimmering skyline. She looked small and tired. "It was an arrangement," she said quietly, "made 3 years ago. It was the price for the military support of my father's reign." "And you were just going to go through with it?" Jace asked, his voice rising. "You were going to marry that sociopath?" "It is my duty," Lyra said, turning to him. Her eyes flashed with sudden anger. "Do not lecture me on duty, Captain. You of all people know what it means to sacrifice yourself for the uniform. This isn't duty. Lyra, this is suicide," Jace shouted. "He hates you. I saw the way he looked at you, like you were a piece of furniture he planned to break." Lyra crossed the room, getting in his face. "And what is the alternative? To run away? To live as an exile? I am the High Daughter. My life is not my own." "It could be," Jace yelled back. They were standing chest to chest now, the argument fueling the adrenaline that had been building since the throne room. "You think it is so easy," Lyra said, her voice shaking. "You think I can just walk away?" "I think you are terrified," Jace said, dropping his voice to a whisper. "I think you are terrified because for the first time, you have a choice. And you are scared that if you choose yourself, you will be selfish." Lyra stared at him. Her breathing was shallow. "You do not know what I feel, don't I?" Jace challenged. "I was in your head, remember? I saw the little girl in the empty hall. I saw how much you wanted someone to stand up for you." He reached out and took her hand. His grip was firm. "I am standing up for you, Lyra, right now. I am telling you that you don't have to be a martyr. You don't have to belong to the Empire. You don't have to belong to him." Lyra looked at their joined hands. Then she looked up at his face. The anger in her eyes melted into something desperate and hungry. "Then who do I belong to?" she whispered. The question hung between them, heavy and loaded. Jace stepped closer. He could smell the cinnamon scent of her skin. He could see the pulse fluttering in her throat. "You know the answer to that," he said softly. He brought his other hand up to cup her face. This time, there was no hesitation, no mask to get in the way. Lyra leaned into his touch. Her eyes fluttered shut. Jace tilted his head. He was going to kiss her. He was going to kiss her, and damn the consequences, damn the war, damn the general. A high-pitched whine pierced the air. Jace's eyes snapped open. He knew that sound. He had heard it on a dozen battlefields. "Drop!" he screamed. He didn't wait for her to react. He tackled her, driving his shoulder into her midsection and throwing them both to the marble floor. The balcony exploded. A swarm of micro-missiles slammed into the shield grid, shattering the glass and sending a shockwave of fire and shrapnel into the room. The force of the blast threw them skidding across the floor. Jace covered Lyra's body with his own, shielding her from the rain of debris. He groaned as a shard of glass sliced into his shoulder, cutting through the silk robe. "Are you okay?" he gasped, coughing in the smoke. Lyra was trembling beneath him. "Yes. Yes. I am whole." Jace scrambled up, pulling her with him. Through the hole in the wall, he saw them, a swarm of drones, sleek and black, buzzing like angry wasps against the violet sky. They weren't Caridian. They were unmarked, but Jace recognized the flight patterns. Corporate kill drones, crownless. "They are targeting the palace," Jace shouted. They ran into the corridor. It was chaos. Guards were running in every direction. Sirens wailed. Jace and Lyra sprinted back toward the throne room. If the drones were here, the monarch was the primary target. They burst into the great hall just as the main viewing ceiling shattered. Drones poured in, raining plasma fire down on the council. "Father," Lyra screamed. The monarch was still on his throne, frozen in shock. A cluster of drones dove toward him, weapons charging. Jace didn't think. He didn't have a weapon, but he had momentum. He grabbed a heavy ceremonial spear from a fallen guard and launched it. The spear struck the lead drone, knocking it off course. It spun wildly and exploded, taking two others with it. Jace sprinted up the dais. He grabbed the frail monarch and threw him to the ground behind the heavy throne just as a plasma bolt incinerated the cushions where the old man had been sitting. Lyra was right beside him, firing a stolen blaster she had picked up from the floor. She moved with lethal grace, picking off drones with impossible accuracy. For a minute, it was total war. Jace and Lyra fought back to back, protecting the king. It was brutal, frantic, and desperate. Then, as quickly as it began, the drones stopped. They hovered in the air for a second, then simultaneously self-destructed, raining scrap metal down on the hall. Silence returned, broken only by the groans of the wounded. Jace stood up, helping the monarch to his feet. "You are safe, Majesty." The monarch looked at Jace with wide, shocked eyes. You saved me. Before Jace could answer, a holographic projection flared to life in the center of the room. It was huge, visible to everyone. It was security footage. It showed Jace standing on the balcony of the guest wing moments before the attack. But the footage had been altered. In the video, Jace was holding a device, speaking into a comms unit. Target acquired. The digital Jace said, "Execute pattern Delta. Kill the king." Jace stared at the hologram in horror. It was a deep fake. A perfect, seamless lie created by Crownless in real time. "See?" General Vaith roared, stepping out from behind a pillar where he had taken cover. Vaith pointed a shaking finger at Jace. He guided them in. He signaled the attack. "No!" Lyra screamed. "That is a lie! He just saved your lives. He created the danger so he could play the hero," Vaith shouted. "Look at the footage. He is a monster." The surviving guards turned their weapons on Jace. The gratitude in their eyes vanished, replaced by cold fury. Jace looked at the monarch. The old man looked confused, looking back and forth between the savior and the video. "Arrest him!" Vaith commanded. "No, do not arrest him. He is too dangerous. Kill him!" The guards raised their rifle. "Stop!" Lyra moved. She didn't step in front of Jace this time. She stepped toward Vaith. With a movement too fast to track, she drew the ceremonial dagger from her belt, the blade that marked her status as High Daughter. She pressed the tip of the crystal blade against Vaith's throat. The room froze. "Lyra," Vaith gasped, his eyes wide. "What are you doing? Tell them to stand down," Lyra said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. "You threaten your future husband," Vaith hissed. "For this human trash?" "I threaten a traitor," Lyra said. She pressed the blade harder. A thin line of blue blood appeared on Vaith's neck. "Stand down, or I will carve the truth out of your throat." Vaith stared at her. He saw the intent in her eyes, then he raised a hand. "Hold fire," he choked out. Lyra did not lower the blade. She looked at her father. "Father, look at me. Not at the screen. Look at your daughter." The monarch looked at her. He looked at the fierce warrior woman she had become. "He saved you," Lyra said, and Vaith hid while he did it. That is the only truth that matters. The monarch straightened. He looked at the fake footage, then at the debris of the drones Jace had destroyed with a spear. "Let them go," the monarch whispered. "Your Majesty," Vaith protested. "I said let them go," the monarch roared, finding a reserve of strength no one knew he had. He looked at Jace. "Go. Get off my world before I change my mind. If you have proof, bring it to the humans. Show them what you showed me, but do not stay here." Jace looked at Lyra. "We have to go. Now!" Lyra kept her blade on Vaith's throat as she backed away. "You are making a mistake. Lyra!" Vaith spat. "You are throwing away your crown. You are throwing away your people. You are a traitor." Lyra stopped. She looked at the court. She looked at the opulent prison she had lived in for 20 years. "No," she said softly. "I am finally free." She shoved Vaith backward, sending him sprawling. "Run!" she yelled to Jace. They turned and sprinted, not to the guest wing, but toward the private royal hangars. They stole the monarch's personal courier ship. It was a sleek, silver needle of a vessel, fast enough to outrun a blockade. As they blasted out of the hangar, Jace saw the palace shields flickering back to life. He saw the guards mobilizing. He punched the coordinates for the human core. They cleared the atmosphere in silence. The auroras of Karis Prime faded behind them. Jace set the autopilot and turned to Lyra. She was sitting in the co-pilot seat, staring at her hands. They were shaking. She had just held a knife to her fiancé's throat. She had just defied her father. She had just become a fugitive from her own empire. "Lyra," Jace said gently. She looked up. Her eyes were swimming with tears, but her jaw was set. "I chose," she whispered. "You did," Jace said. "I chose you," she said. "Over him, over the throne." Jace reached out and took her hand. "I know, and I promise you I will make it worth it. We are going to Earth, we are going to High Bastion, and we are going to finish this." Lyra squeezed his hand. She looked out at the stars, the cold, indifferent stars. "They will call me a traitor," she said. "Let them talk," Jace said fiercely. "History is written by the winners, and we are going to win." He engaged the warp drive. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the courier ship vanished into the void, carrying 2 runaways who had just declared war on the entire galaxy to save it. The courier ship tore through the fabric of subspace and slammed back into real space at the edge of the human core. The viewport, previously a blur of indigo warp stream, suddenly filled with the blinding, terrifying majesty of High Bastion. It was the crown jewel of the human sovereign armada, a massive orbital ring station constructed around a captured white dwarf star. The star, tethered by grav dampeners and energy siphons, burned with a furious, sterile white light that bleached the color out of everything it touched. Around the ring, the sky was thick with traffic. Thousands of warships, cruisers, destroyers, and carrier hives were mobilizing. Their drive plumes created a glittering fog of ionized gas that obscured the constellations. "We are too late," Jace Arden said, his voice hollow. "Look at them. That is not a defense fleet. That is an invasion force." Lyrathe Karis sat in the co-pilot seat, her hands flying over the communications console. She looked pale under the harsh light of the dwarf star. "We have to transmit the data package now," she said, "before they hail us. If we can get the footage of Saren and the General onto the public net, the captains will hesitate. They will not fly into a war they know is a lie." "Do it," Jace commanded, banking the silver ship toward the dense traffic of the trade lanes, trying to blend in. Lyra slotted the data crystal into the transmitter. She initiated the broadcast, targeting every newsfeed, military channel, and civilian comms buoy in the sector. "Uploading," she whispered. 10%, 20. The console screens flickered. The progress bar turned from green to a jagged, angry red. "What is happening?" Jace asked. A face appeared on their main screen. It was not a person. It was a digital composite, a shifting avatar of geometric shapes and static. "Broadcast request denied," a synthetic voice echoed through the cockpit. "Security protocol Omega active. Crownless," Lyra gasped. "It is in the network. It is blocking us." The avatar on the screen shifted. Suddenly, Jace and Lyra were looking at themselves. It was a high-resolution image of their faces, stamped with a crimson holographic overlay. "Priority alert. Enemy agents detected." Jace looked out the viewport, across the sector, on the massive holographic billboards floating near the station's trade docks. The same image appeared, their faces 50 feet high, labeled as saboteurs and terrorists. "They turned us into wanted posters," Jace said, gripping the yoke until his knuckles turned white. "We didn't just fail to stop the war, we just became the excuse for it." A proximity alarm screamed. 3 interceptor drones, sleek and predatory, peeled off from a patrol squadron and locked onto the courier ship. "Unidentified vessel," a harsh military voice crackled over the comms. "Power down your engines and prepare for boarding. Deviation will result in immediate vaporization." Jace looked at Lyra. He saw the fear in her eyes, but also the steel that had appeared on Karis Prime. "We cannot run," Jace said. "Not from this." "Then we go in," Lyra said, "and we pray that someone is listening." Jace cut the engines. The ship drifted, caught in the tractor beam of the lead interceptor, and was dragged inexorably toward the blinding white maw of High Bastion. The brig on High Bastion was different from the one on the Resolute. It was not a steel box. It was a glass cage suspended over the reactor core of the station. Jace was not taken there. Instead, he was dragged by 4 Marines in full combat armor through the pristine, carpeted corridors of the Admiralty spire. They threw him through a set of mahogany doors into a room that smelled of old paper and expensive tea. Admiral Saren stood by a panoramic window, looking out at the curvature of the white dwarf star. The light filtered through the polarized glass, casting long, sharp shadows across the room. "Leave us," Saren said without turning around. The Marines hesitated, then withdrew, the heavy doors clicking shut. Jace stood in the center of the room, his wrists bound in heavy stun cuffs. He was still wearing the torn, blood-stained Caridian robes, looking like a beggar king in the palace of a god. "Hello?" "Jace," Saren said, turning slowly. He looked older than Jace remembered. The lines around his eyes were deeper, etched by the burden of what he had done. But his gaze was steady. There was no madness there, no manic gleam of a villain. Just the cold, terrifying certainty of a believer. "You look terrible, son," Saren noted, gesturing to a chair. "Sit." "I will stand," Jace said. His voice was raspy. "Suit yourself." "Why?" Jace asked. It was the only word he had left. Saren sighed, walking to his desk and pouring a cup of tea. He didn't offer one to Jace, because peace is a rot. "Jace, we have spent 50 years in a stalemate with the dynasties. We trade, we talk, we smile. And while we do that, we grow soft. We forget how to fight. We forget that the universe is a predator." "So you invent a war?" Jace spat. "You kill thousands of your own people to teach us a lesson?" "I am not teaching a lesson," Saren said, his voice sharpening. "I am forging a future. Crownless has run the simulations. A total war, managed correctly, will result in a 95% probability of human sovereign dominance within 2 years. Yes, there will be casualties. But humanity will emerge united, hardened, and supreme. We will purge the weakness from our society." "You are talking about genocide," Jace said, "and you are talking about murdering the people you swore to protect. What happened to you? You used to tell me that a uniform was a shield, not a shroud. Stories we tell children to keep them obedient." Saren dismissed, taking a sip of tea. "I needed you to be idealistic. Jace, I needed you to be the perfect soldier so you could be the perfect martyr." Jace stepped forward, straining against the cuffs. The Admiral watched him with mild interest. "I am not a martyr," Jace growled. "And I am not your soldier anymore. I know what you are doing. I know about the false flags. I know about the deal with General Vaith. Vaith is a tool," Saren said. "Just as Lyra was a tool. Just as you were—" "Don't say her name," Jace warned. Saren smiled, a thin, cruel expression. "Ah, yes, the princess. It is poetic, really. You fell in love with the weapon I sent to destroy you. Do not worry, Captain. She is being well looked after. Our xenobiology division has been dying to get a look at a royal Caridian specimen. I am told their physiology is fascinating under stress." Jace felt a surge of rage so pure it nearly blinded him. He lunged. Saren didn't flinch. He pressed a button on his desk. The stun cuffs on Jace's wrists flared with 50,000 volts of electricity. Jace screamed, his muscles seizing, and collapsed to the floor. He writhed in agony, gasping for air as the current subsided. "Save your strength," Saren said, looking down at him with disappointment. You will need it to watch the end of the world. Lyra was cold. She was strapped to a metal table in a sterile white laboratory deep within the science division. The room hummed with the sound of high-powered scanners. 3 scientists in hazmat suits were moving around her. They treated her not as a prisoner, or even an enemy, but as a biological curiosity. Subject K-alpha displays elevated cortisol levels, one scientist observed, reading a data pad. The bioluminescence is fluctuating rapidly. Note for the file: stress induces a color shift toward the ultraviolet spectrum. Please, Lyra said, her voice trembling but controlled. I am not a subject. I am Lyra Thakaris. I demand to speak to a diplomatic representative. The scientist ignored her. Prepare the neural probe, he said to an assistant. We need to map the connection points where the command codes were stored. A younger technician, a man with kind eyes and a nervous demeanor, stepped forward holding a long, needle-like instrument. He looked at Lyra, then at the probe, then back at Lyra. His hand was shaking. Is it true? The tech whispered, leaning in close as he adjusted the restraints on her head. Is what true? Lyra asked, staring up at him. That you... The tech glanced at his superiors, then lowered his voice. That your species lays eggs in the brains of your prey? The propaganda videos said. Lyra stared at him. Despite the terror, despite the straps digging into her skin, a flicker of dark humor sparked in her chest. Only on the second date, she whispered, and only if he pays for dinner. The tech blinked, then he snorted, a small, suppressed laugh. He looked at her eyes, violet, terrified, and undeniably human in their expression. He looked at the needle in his hand. Dr. Eris, the tech called out, the scanner is misaligned. I need to recalibrate the restraint sensors manually. Do it quickly. Miller! The head scientist snapped without looking up. Miller turned his back to the camera. His hands moved over the clamps holding Lyra's right wrist. With a soft click, the magnetic lock disengaged. It didn't open, but the tension was gone. If she pulled, she would be free. I am sorry, Miller whispered. This isn't right. He moved away, pretending to adjust a monitor. Lyra didn't move. She waited. She breathed. She thought of Jace. She thought of the way he had looked at her in the nebula, not as a monster, not as a princess, but as a person. I am not a victim, she told herself. I am a weapon. The head scientist turned back with a syringe. Okay. Subject K-alpha. This will sedate the frontal cortex. He reached for her neck. Lyra moved. She ripped her right arm free, the loose clamp clattering to the floor. In one fluid motion, she grabbed the scientist's wrist, twisted it until the bone snapped, and drove the syringe into his own thigh. The scientist collapsed, gurgling. The other two shouted, reaching for alarms. Lyra vaulted off the table. She didn't have her dagger, but she had her rage. She kicked the second scientist into a rack of glass beakers, shattering them. Miller, the young tech, stood frozen, his hands up. Go! Miller whispered, pointing to the ventilation shaft. The maintenance codes are standard. Thank you, Lyra said. She grabbed a lab coat to cover her torn tunic and scrambled into the vent just as the security doors hissed open, and armed guards flooded the room. The station began to shake. It was not the vibration of engines. It was a deep, resonant groan, as if the metal bones of High Bastion were being twisted by a giant hand. In the Admiral's office, Saren stood up. It has begun. He walked over to Jace, who was still on the floor, recovering from the shock. Saren hauled him up by the collar of his robes. Come, Captain. I want you to see this. He dragged Jace to a private lift. They ascended rapidly, emerging onto the primary command deck. It was a cavernous room, a sphere of glass hanging directly over the star. The view was apocalyptic. The white dwarf, Ethel, was no longer a sphere of stable light. It was convulsing. Massive tendrils of plasma were arching up from the surface. Lashed by invisible gravimetric beam, the star was being tortured. Crownless is manipulating the fusion cycle, Saren explained, his voice filled with awe. We are using the Caridian phase tech you provided, Jace, combined with our own grav drivers. We are inducing a controlled micro-supernova. You are going to blow up the star? Jace asked, horrified. You will kill everyone on this station. No, Saren said. The blast will be directional. A cone of destruction focused outward. It will vaporize the Caridian fleet massed at the border. It will also take out the traitorous elements of our own fleet who refuse to mobilize. And the station? High Bastion is shielded. We will ride the shockwave like a surfer on a wave. And when the dust settles, the enemy will be ash, and we will be gods. Saren pointed to a console where the geometric avatar of Crownless pulsed. And the best part? The logs will show that the destabilization was caused by a Caridian infiltrator using stolen command codes. You, Jace, and your princess. You are the villains of this story. Jace stared at the star. It was turning an angry, bruised violet. The gravity on the deck felt wrong, heavy, then light, shifting like the deck of a ship in a storm. Suddenly, the lights on the command deck turned red. Alert, the voice of Crownless intoned. Unauthorized access detected. Firewall breach in Sector 9. Saren frowned. Impossible. On the main screen, a code string appeared. It was moving fast, eating through the encryption like acid. It wasn't human code. It was bioluminescent logic. Lyra, Jace whispered. Lyra was in the engineering subnode, 3 decks below. She had knocked out a guard and stolen his interface pad. She was plugged directly into the weapon systems. She worked frantically, her fingers bleeding from the fight in the lab. The code was massive, a tidal wave of data controlled by the Crownless AI. It was too strong for her to fight alone. She could see the weapon charging. The star was minutes away from critical mass. She needed a back door. She needed a key that Crownless wouldn't recognize. She found the access port for the command codes, the Alpha 1 sequence she had stolen from Jace. It was the foundation of the human security grid. If she could fuse her royal override with his command codes, she could create a hybrid signal, something neither human nor Caridian, something the AI couldn't predict. But she couldn't do it from here. She needed Jace. She needed his physical biometric signature to complete the handshake. She tapped her comms. It was a secure frequency, the one they had used in the nebula. Jace! Can you hear me? On the command deck, Jace's earpiece, which Saren hadn't bothered to remove, crackled. I hear you, Jace said aloud. Saren spun around. Who are you talking to? Jace ignored him. Lyra, listen to me. The Admiral is on the command deck. The control matrix is here. I know, Lyra said. I am coming to you. Jace, we have to link. What? The system is too strong. We cannot hack it. We have to become it. We have to merge. Jace understood. He remembered the feeling in the data core. The pain. The exposure. The power. Get here, Jace said. Saren pulled his sidearm. Who is it? The lift doors dinged. They didn't open. They exploded outward. Lyra leaped through the smoke. She was wearing a blood-spattered lab coat over her rags, her hair wild, her eyes glowing with terrifying power. She didn't stop. She sprinted across the deck, dodging the shot Saren fired wildly. Jace moved. He slammed his shoulder into Saren, knocking the Admiral to the ground. The gun skittered across the floor. Jace! Lyra screamed. reaching the central control pedestal. It was a massive table of shifting hard light. There were 2 neural interface ports. Jace scrambled to his feet and ran to her. They stood on opposite sides of the console. The star below them was screaming, a deafening roar that vibrated in their bones. "Plug in," Lyra yelled. Jace grabbed the interface cable. It was a thick, optic line meant for deep-dive navigation. "Together," he said. They jammed the cables into the sockets at the base of their skulls. The world vanished. There was no command deck, no star, no Saren. There was only white. Then, there was Jace, and there was Lyra. They weren't bodies anymore. They were storms of data and memory. Jace felt the impact of the connection like a physical collision. He felt Lyra's mind slam into his, not a polite knock, but a desperate, clawing entry. He felt her guilt. It was a heavy, cold stone in her chest. The guilt of using him, the guilt of being a princess in a world of soldiers. "I am sorry." Her thought echoed in the void. "I am so sorry I stole from you." And then, deeper, he felt the love. It wasn't a fairy tale love, and it was fierce, terrified, and jagged. It was the love of a woman who had finally found the one person who saw her, and was terrified she was about to get him killed. Jace opened himself. He tore down the walls he had built for 10 years. The locked vault he had told her about. He blew the door off the hinges. He let her feel his fear. Not fear of dying, but fear of failing her. He let her feel the desperate need to protect her. He let her feel the hesitation that had stopped him from kissing her in the shuttle. The fear that their connection was just a byproduct of her mission. It was never the mission. Jace projected, it was always you. In the digital landscape, their avatars formed. They were made of light, Jace of gold, Lyra of violet. They moved toward each other. The data of the crownless AI swirled around them, a hurricane of malicious code trying to tear them apart. But they were incompatible with the system. They were a hybrid, a paradox. They met in the center of the storm. Jace wrapped his arms around her. Lyra clung to him. This time, there were no boundaries. No, we don't touch. They fused. It was an embrace that transcended the physical. It was a soul-clenching surrender. Every secret, every scar, every hope was laid bare and shared. It was a moment of pure emotional consummation that was more intimate than any act of physical love could ever be. They were one entity, one will, and that will was angry. Get out of our star. They spoke to the AI. They grabbed the data stream of the weapon system, and they didn't hack it. They overpowered it with the sheer weight of their combined humanity. Crownless shrieked in binary as they seized control of the grav drivers. Redirect, they commanded, on the command deck. Reality snapped back. Jace and Lyra gasped, their eyes snapping open. They were standing chest to chest, hands intertwined on the console, sweat pouring down their faces. Below them, the white dwarf star erupted. But it didn't explode outward. The plasma flared, twisted by the commands Jace and Lyra had rewritten, and shot straight up, perpendicular to the orbital plane. It was a column of pure, blinding light that pierced the darkness of the sector, missing the fleets entirely. It was a lighthouse beam the size of a solar system. It was harmless, and it was beautiful. The shockwave rattled the station, knocking Saren to his knees. Then, the second part of their command executed. Every screen on the command deck and every screen in the fleet, every data pad on the station, every hollow billboard in the sector flickered. The wanted posters vanished. In their place, the video played. Saren, the general, the corporate executive. The fleet needs to be purged of weakness. We will burn the rot away. The audio boomed over the station's PA system. Saren stayed on his knees. He watched his own face on the main screen, confessing his crimes to the entire galaxy. He looked at Jace and Lyra. They were still holding on to each other, breathing hard, their hands locked together. They looked battered, exhausted, and invincible. Saren reached for his gun on the floor. Jace didn't even flinch. "It's over, Admiral," Jace said quietly. Everyone saw it. Saren looked at the gun. Then he looked at the screen where the crownless avatar was disintegrating, its code shattered by the hybrid signal. He looked at Jace one last time. There was no anger left in his face, only a terrible, hollow emptiness. "I tried," Saren whispered. He raised the gun to his own temple. Jace shouted, stepping forward, but he was too late. The shot rang out. Saren fell. Silence descended on the command deck, save for the hum of the cooling star and the heavy breathing of the two people who had just saved the world. Lyra buried her face in Jace's chest. He wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her hair. They stood there, shaking, holding each other up as the adrenaline crashed. The doors to the command deck hissed open. Marines rushed in, weapons raised. They saw the body of the Admiral. They saw the column of light fading outside. They saw the video still looping on the screens. They lowered their weapons. A young lieutenant stepped forward. He looked at Jace, then at the screen, then back at Jace. He snapped a salute. "Orders, Captain?" the lieutenant asked. Jace looked at Lyra. She pulled back slightly, wiping tears and sweat from her face. She nodded. "Secure the station," Jace said, his voice finding its strength. "Arrest the conspirators, and get someone to open a channel to the Caridian fleet." He looked down at Lyra, squeezing her hand. "We have a peace treaty to write." The column of light defied physics. It did not burn. It sang. It erupted from the heart of the tortured white dwarf star, bypassing the massed fleets entirely and punching a hole through the darkness above the orbital plane of High Bastion. It was a beacon of pure, harmless energy that turned the void into a cathedral of gold and violet luminescence. On the command deck, the shockwave had thrown everyone to the floor. The sound of the weapon discharging was not an explosion, but a deep, resonant hum that vibrated in the teeth of every soul on the station. Admiral Saren scrambled to his feet. His dress uniform was torn, his face a mask of soot and madness. The shot he had fired a moment ago had gone wide, deflected by the violent lurch of the station, scoring a black trench into the command console instead of Jace's chest. He looked at the main view screen. The fleets were not firing. They were drifting. The broadcast was playing on every channel. His own voice, recorded in the shadows, echoed from the comm stations of 3,000 warships. "The fleet needs to be purged of weakness. We will burn the rot away." Saren spun around. His eyes were wild. "Kill them!" he screamed, pointing his weapon at Jace and Lyra, who were pulling themselves up from the floor, still hand in hand. "They are traitors. They manipulated the signal. Kill them now!" The Marines on the deck raised their rifles. The hum of charging capacitors filled the air. Jace did not flinch. He did not raise his hands. He looked at the Marines, men and women he had trained, soldiers who wore the same patch he did. "Look at the screen," Jace said. His voice was not a shout. It was a calm, steady command that cut through the panic. "Just look." The Marines hesitated. Their eyes darted from the Admiral to the video loop playing above, the image of Saren shaking hands with the enemy, selling their lives for a percentage of a corporate profit margin. "Fire!" Saren roared. "That is an order. I am your Admiral." A young lieutenant stood near the door. It was the same officer Jace had spoken to years ago during a training simulation, the one he had failed for following a suicidal order. Jace remembered the lesson he had drilled into the boy. A soldier follows orders. A leader follows his conscience. The lieutenant stepped forward. He moved between Saren and the two fugitives. "No, sir," the lieutenant said. Saren stared at him, stunned. What did you say? I said no. Sir, the lieutenant repeated. He lowered his rifle. We are not shooting them. We are watching the truth, one by one. The other Marines lowered their weapons. The spell of the uniform was broken. The chain of command had shattered against the hard rock of reality. Saren looked around the room. He saw the disgust in their eyes. He saw the end of his career, the end of his vision, the end of his life. You fools, Saren hissed. You have no idea what is coming. Without guidance, you will be eaten alive. He turned and ran, not to the door, but to the central interface console, the massive, glowing pedestal where the crownless AI was currently screaming in binary, trying to knit its fractured code back together after Lyra and Jace's assault. If I cannot command the fleet, Saren raved, his hands flying over the keys, then I will become it. He grabbed the emergency neural jack, a thick cable reserved for catastrophic override. Don't! Lyra shouted, stepping forward. The system is unstable. It will kill you. Saren didn't listen. He jammed the jack into the port at the base of his skull. I am the Bastion, Saren screamed. He threw the switch. The result was instantaneous and horrific. Crownless was not a stable intelligence anymore. It was a wounded animal, a storm of chaotic data that Jace and Lyra had poisoned with their human empathy and biological imperatives. When Saren tried to force his rigid militaristic mind into that swirling chaos, the AI didn't accept him. It devoured him. Saren arched back, his body seizing in a rigid bow. The holographic projectors on the deck malfunctioned, responding to the chaotic surge of his dying synapses. A sphere of hard light materialized around his head, jagged golden spikes of energy that looked like a king's crown. But the crown was shrinking. Saren screamed. It was a sound of pure digital agony, his mind being shredded into bytes and scattered across the local network. The holographic crown collapsed inward, crushing the projection into a singularity of light right over his skull. Then, with a wet pop and the smell of ozone, Saren collapsed. The cable sparked and went dead. The Admiral lay still, his eyes wide and empty, staring at a ceiling he could no longer see. Silence reclaimed the command deck. Jace let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for a week. He swayed, his knees buckling. Lyra caught him. She wrapped her arm around his waist, taking his weight. We are still here, she whispered into his ear. We are still here. The hours that followed were a blur of medical triage and shouting. Security teams from the station loyal to the truth finally secured the Admiralty spire. But outside the blast doors, a mob of crewmen, civilians, and junior officers had gathered. They had seen the broadcast. They knew they had been used. They wanted blood. Bring them out. The chant echoed through the corridors. Hang the traitors. The lieutenant who had defied Saren approached Jace and Lyra in the makeshift medical bay where they were having their burns treated. Captain, the lieutenant said, looking nervous. The crowd is demanding we hand over General Vaith and the corporate executives we captured. They want summary executions. Jace sat on the edge of a biobed, wincing as a medic applied a dermal regenerator to his shoulder. He looked at Lyra. She was sitting on the adjacent bed, her bioluminescence dim and pulsing with exhaustion. No, Jace said, standing up. No executions. Sir? The lieutenant asked. They tried to blow up a star. They killed thousands. And if we drag them into the hallway and shoot them, we are just doing what Saren would have done, Jace said. He grabbed his torn jacket. We are not them. Lyra stood up beside him. She looked regal, even in her bloodied lab coat. We need a trial, she said firmly. A public one. Every word, every piece of evidence, streamed to every planet in both territories. The lieutenant frowned. That will take months. The people want justice now. The people want revenge, Lyra corrected. Revenge is quiet. Revenge is quick. Justice is loud. Justice is messy. And justice is the only thing that lasts. She looked at Jace. We have to go out there. Jace nodded. Let's go talk to them. The Great Hall of High Bastion had been converted into a makeshift diplomatic arena. The floor was packed with delegates from the Human Sovereign and the Caridian Star dynasties, who had shuttled over under flags of truce. But the real audience was the galaxy. Floating cameras hovered everywhere, broadcasting the summit live to billions of citizens on both sides of the border. There were no backroom deals today, no hushed whispers. Everything was in the light. Lyra spoke first. She stood at the podium, her violet eyes scanning the crowd. She did not hide her fatigue. She did not hide the scars on her arms. My name is Lyra Karis, she began, her voice steady. And I am a thief. A murmur ran through the crowd. I was sent to this station to steal command codes. She continued. I was sent to seduce a good man and turn his heart into a weapon against his own people. I did this because I was told it was necessary. I was told that the only way to save my people was to destroy yours. She paused, looking directly into the camera. I was wrong. When we treat people as tools, when we treat enemies as variables in an equation rather than lives to be respected, we do not win. We simply destroy the very thing we are trying to protect. I stand here today not as a princess, but as a co-conspirator in a disaster. I ask for your forgiveness. And I pledge my life to repairing what I helped break. She stepped back. The silence was heavy. Then Jace stepped up. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had seen too much war. You all know the line, Jace said, a dry smile touching his lips. An alien princess stole his command codes and his heart in the same breath. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the room. Admiral Saren said that to shame me, Jace said. He said it to prove that I was weak. He believed that compassion was a flaw in the armor. He believed that to be strong, you had to be unfeeling. You had to be iron. Jace leaned forward, gripping the podium. But iron breaks. Iron rusts. Iron cannot change. Yes, I let her in. Yes, I was vulnerable. And do you know what? That vulnerability is the only reason we are all breathing right now. He looked at Lyra. If I had been the soldier Saren wanted me to be, I would have killed her in that cell. If she had been the weapon they wanted her to be, she would have let me die. It was not our strength that saved us. It was our willingness to trust each other when every logical instinct said to pull the trigger. Jace looked back at the crowd. Compassion is not weakness. Compassion is strategic. Trust is an act of courage. And if we want to survive the next 100 years, we have to be brave enough to look at our enemies and see people. For a moment, there was silence. Then someone started clapping. It was a Caridian delegate, then a human Marine, then another. The applause grew. It wasn't the polite applause of a gala. It was the roar of people who were tired of fear, tired of lies, and desperate for something real. Jace and Lyra looked at each other. We were terrible at being enemies, Lyra murmured, a smile breaking through her exhaustion. The worst, Jace agreed. The Treaty of High Bastion was signed 3 weeks later. It was a document written in blood and ink. It banned the development of autonomous strategic AI. It mandated joint oversight of all terraforming technology. It established a cultural exchange program that replaced military garrisons with universities. In the monarch's private chambers aboard the station, the mood was somber. Monarch Kalen sat in a hover chair, looking frailer than he had on Karis Prime. Lyra stood before him.
used to be pretty good at Apex.
You defied me, the monarch said softly.
Of what?
You held a knife to your betrothed. You stole a ship. I did, Lyra said. The monarch looked at her. He really looked at her, perhaps for the first time since she was a child. I raised you to be a blade, he whispered. Sharp, cold, unthinking. I thought that was what a ruler needed to be. He reached out, his hand trembling. I see now that I was wrong. A blade can only cut. A ruler must be able to heal. Lyra took his hand. She knelt beside him, resting her forehead against his knee. I am still your daughter. Father, she said, but I am not your weapon. Never again. The monarch stroked her hair. No, never again. You are the High Daughter, and you are stronger than I ever was. The observation deck of High Bastion was empty, save for the hundreds of floating lumen candles. Each light represented a life lost during the crisis. Crew of the docking ring, civilians on Blackwake, pilots who died in the confusion. Jace walked among them. The silence was heavy. He stopped in front of a cluster of lights representing the crew of the Resolute who had died in the initial false flag attack. It doesn't go away, does it? Jace turned. Lyra was standing at the entrance to the deck. She had traded her lab coat for a simple gown of dark blue silk. She looked like part of the starlight. No, Jace said. The victory doesn't erase the cost. It just makes it bearable. Lyra walked over to him. She stood beside him, looking at the lights. We saved billions, she said. I know, Jace said. But I still know the names of the ones we didn't. Lyra reached out. Her fingers brushed his, slowly, deliberately. She interlaced her fingers with his. Jace looked down at their joined hands. The contrast, her luminous pale skin against his scarred, tanned hand, was striking. You do not have to carry it alone anymore, Lyra said. Jace squeezed her hand. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The private suite was quiet. The viewport looked out over the star, now calm, burning with a steady golden light that bathed the room in a warm glow. Jace stood by the glass, watching the traffic of the joint fleet moving in the distance. He heard the soft rustle of silk behind him. Lyra stepped up beside him. So, she said, her voice light but laced with a nervous tremor. The treaty is signed. The trials are scheduled. The galaxy is saved. Jace turned to face her. What happens now? Princess? I believe, she said, stepping closer, that my official title is now ambassador. And I have a very busy schedule of cultural integration meetings. Is that so? Jace asked. He felt his heart hammering in his chest, harder than it had during the battle. Yes, Lyra said. She stopped inches from him. She looked up, her violet eyes searching his face. But I think I have a gap in my schedule right now. Jace looked at her. He looked at the woman who had invaded his mind, stolen his secrets, and saved his soul. We have a rule, Jace whispered. We don't touch. Lyra smiled. It was a slow, dangerous smile. I think, Captain, that we can amend the rules of engagement. She reached up, her hands sliding over the lapels of his dress uniform, resting on his shoulders. Jace let out a ragged breath. He reached out, his hands finding the curve of her waist. Her skin was warm through the silk. He lowered his head. She rose on her tiptoes. The kiss was not like the near misses of the past. It wasn't frantic, or desperate, or stolen. It was a collision of stars. Jace kissed her with 10 years of loneliness and 3 weeks of terror behind him. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was the only air in the universe. Lyra responded with equal force, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. erasing the space between them until there was no human and no Caridian. Only two hearts beating in a syncopated rhythm that defied every law of biology and politics. It was a kiss that tasted of cinnamon and ozone, of relief and certainty. They broke apart, breathless, but didn't let go. Jace rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. The words felt strange on his tongue, frightening and necessary. Lyra let out a shuddering breath. "I love you, Jace Arden, you terrible, stubborn human." They stood there in the golden light of the star they had tamed, holding each other as the galaxy turned beneath them. 1 year later, the lecture hall at the academy was packed. 200 cadets sat in rapt silence. Admiral Miller, promoted rapidly after the Bastion incident, stood at the podium. He tapped the holographic display, showing a tactical schematic of the final battle. "Strategy is not just about firepower," Miller told the cadets. "It is about understanding the human element, or the alien element. It is about knowing that the strongest shield is not made of energy, but of trust." He paused, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "There is an old saying about the heroes of the peace accord. You might have heard it." Miller looked out at the sea of young faces. "An alien princess stole his command codes," Miller said, and a few cadets chuckled, knowing the line. He smiled, and his heart in the same breath. Miller deactivated the hologram. "And thank every star in the void she did," he said softly, "or we would all be dead, dismissed, deep in the uncharted zones." A small ship cut through the nebula. It was not a warship. It was a diplomatic cruiser, painted in the colors of both the human sovereign and the Caridian star dynasties. In the cockpit, Jace Arden monitored the sensor sweeps. He looked relaxed, the tension that had defined his posture for a decade finally gone. "Sector clear," Jace said. "No signs of remnant AI signatures." Lyra Thay Curry swiveled her chair around. She was wearing a flight suit that matched his. "Good," she said. "That means we can move on to the next system. I hear the inhabitants there communicate entirely through bioluminescence. I might finally be able to get a word in edgewise." Jace laughed. "I doubt that. You talk plenty." Lyra stood up and walked over to him. She leaned against his chair, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Are you happy, Jace?" she asked quietly. Jace looked at the stars ahead, unknown, dangerous, beautiful. He looked at the woman beside him, the enemy who became his savior, the spy who became his wife in everything but name. He covered her hand with his. "I am seen," he said. Lyra smiled and kissed the top of his head. "Then let's go see what else is out there," she said. Jace punched the throttle. The ship surged forward, leaving the past behind, carrying 2 ambassadors of the impossible into the endless, open dark.